Good, good. Well, welcome everyone to Dickinson State University. Thank you so much for being here on this beautiful Dakota day. My name is Dr. William Hansard. I am the outreach coordinator for the Theodore Roosevelt Center, and it's my pleasure to sort of kick off the events of the day. I do have a few very brief remarks. I am going to be brief. That's the good news. The bad news is you're going to have to hear from me just a few more times as the day goes on, but I will try to keep you entertained. In addition to welcoming everyone here in the audience in person today, I'd like to welcome everyone who's viewing us online. We are streaming live through the Theodore Roosevelt Presidential Library YouTube channel. They graciously supported the live stream this year, so thank you very much to the Theodore Roosevelt Presidential Library for that. We have charged a fee in previous years for the live stream and did not have to do that this year. I do have a couple of thank yous I want to make and a couple of mentions I want to make before we begin things. I want to thank the students of the Theodore Roosevelt Honors Leadership Program. Those students help us a lot with putting on this event. They do a lot of great things for us, so thank you to those students. I also want to thank all of you for coming here. This is something that really is a lot of fun for us at the Theodore Roosevelt Center. We really enjoy having you all come visit us. We enjoy interacting with you, learning from you as much as we're able to teach you also. So that's really exciting for us. I want to mention, you will see as you're out in the lobby area today, you will see paintings by DSU art professor Greg Walter of Theodore Roosevelt National Park, some really beautiful paintings that he has allowed us to put on display. And there's some information hanging near those paintings as well where you can see some more about those. So make sure to take some time to appreciate those if you can. Also, as you're exiting this auditorium, if you turn right, there is a table for book sales. Several of our speakers today have books that are available for you to purchase, and you will be able to get some of them signed at our reception this afternoon as well. And then just one more little bit of housekeeping. With your name tags here, you will see you may or may not have a little blue asterisk, a little blue stamp. If you have that blue stamp, that means you're eligible for lunch today. So if you don't have that stamp but you think you're supposed to, find me and we will work that out. With that, I want to introduce our first speaker of the day, and that is Dr. Jeff Wells. Jeff Wells, PhD, is the Dennis and Vaune Johnson Endowed Chair of U.S. History and Professor of History at Dickinson State University. He is an expert in Gilded Age and Progressive Era politics and serves as an advisor to the Theodore Roosevelt Center. He received his BA in History from Missouri Southern State University, MA in History from Missouri State University, and PhD in History from Texas Christian University. A former journalist, Dr. Wells served on the history faculty of the University of Nebraska at Kearney prior to coming to DSU in 2022. He has published numerous articles and chapters related to politics in Roosevelt's era, and his task this morning is to give you a very brief introduction to some of the topics and themes and the context of the history that we're going to talk about today. So with that, I will turn it over to Dr. Wells. Thank you.
Good morning. Thank you, Dr. Hansard. How's this on the mic? Good. Thank you. Very good. Good morning. My job today is to provide a brief introduction to Theodore Roosevelt, his era, and this theme, conservation and sustainability. Roosevelt was the 26th President of the United States and served from 1901 to 1909. He was born in New York City in 1858, just a few years before the Civil War. Historians use a variety of terms to describe the eras of American history which coincided with Roosevelt's early adult life: Reconstruction, the Gilded Age, and the Progressive Era. Reconstruction both preceded and overlapped with the Gilded Age. Reconstruction referred to more than just the physical rebuilding of the parts of the rebellious states devastated by the Civil War. Reconstruction also meant the economic, social, and political reintegration of the defeated states of the vanquished Confederacy back into the Federal Union. It also included the expansion of the Northern Republican Party's vision into the West. a process that required the conquering and the dispossession of the indigenous peoples and an influx of Euro-American settlers. In the years following the Civil War, Republicans pushed for the rapid settlement and development of the plains, with the goal of establishing stable and independent farms and homes. But conflicts over politics, policy, gender and racial relations, social reforms, the economy, and the use of land and natural resources threatened the prospects for long-term stability. The Gilded Age, the concurrent post-Civil War period, ushered in transformative changes in American industry. Technological advancements and significant national investments in production reduced production and distribution cost. New administrative structures supported the growth of large corporations, while national credit agencies mitigated the risk associated with the swift flow of capital among investors, manufacturers, and retailers. As transportation and communication costs dropped, new national media emerged, allowing advertising agencies to market products on a national scale. The Progressive Era, the period of U.S. history following the Gilded Age, is so named because of the progressives, like TR, who sought to reform all aspects of American life. The progressive reform impulse, however, originated during the Gilded Age. The Gilded Age takes its name from a novel which Mark Twain and Charles Dudley Warner published in 1873. The Gilded Age, a tale of today, satirized the era's wealth, ambition, and corruption. The Gilded Age established a negative reputation for the era, which persisted and was perpetuated by generations of historians. Intense partisanship and factional rivalries characterized the politics of the 1870s, while corruption and scandal plagued the government. During the decade, the first of many reform movements gained popularity. Republicans abandoned their commitment to civil rights for freedmen, and Redeemer white supremacist Democratic governments used violence to win back control of local and state governments in the South. In the West, President Ulysses S. Grant struggled to enforce his desire to exercise peace towards the indigenous peoples. Conflict over the Black Hills led to a new round of war between the United States and American Indians. The Lakota and their allies won a victory over Custer at Little Bighorn, but the U.S. Army soon prevailed. And in the East, mine workers struck for better wages and working conditions, while the railroads and the mine owners inflamed ethnic and religious tensions. The emergence of the modern business enterprise allowed men such as Jay Gould, Andrew Carnegie, John D. Rockefeller, and J.P. Morgan to amass vast fortunes. Their contemporaries, as well as historians, argued about whether these men were admirable heroes of a new age or robber barons. Henry George and his idea of the wedge was among the critiques of capitalism. Yes, George argued, the new innovations brought advancements, but the material gains of progress were often limited to the privileged. Although there was economic growth in the United States, according to George, the problem was a wedge was being driven between those above the wedge, the top income earners, and those below the wedge, the bottom and lower classes. This wedge caused those above it to see their wealth and status elevated. In contrast, those below the wedge saw little expansion of their wealth or status. Railroads, economic growth, and industrialization had held out the hope of prosperity for everyone. However, it only delivered for some. Social and environmental problems accompanied industrialization and urbanization. By 1900, the United States had emerged as the world's leading manufacturing nation, surpassing Britain, Germany, and France. Yet American health and nutrition declined throughout the 19th century. Increased urbanization led to a deterioration of sanitation in American cities and more rampant disease. Life expectancy declined even as per capita wages increased. A baby born at the beginning of the Gilded Age would be shorter in height and have a shorter life than one born during the American Revolution. Between 1850 and 1890, 25 to 30% of white children died before age 5. The child death rates for African Americans were even higher. Theodore Roosevelt entered adulthood in this tumultuous world. Roosevelt struggled with asthma as a young man, but followed his father's advice to build his body through a strenuous life. He graduated from Harvard in 1880 and won election to the New York State Assembly the next year. He quickly gained a reputation as a reform-minded Republican, but tragedy led him to step away from politics. Roosevelt first visited the Dakota Territory on an 1883 hunting trip. The death of his wife and mother on Valentine's Day, 1884, led him to return to the West to grieve. By 1886, Roosevelt was ready to return to public life and entered a three-way race for mayor of New York City. But in that year, Roosevelt's fellow New York elites and anti-Tammany Hall reformers abandoned Roosevelt and the Republicans in favor of the Tammany Hall-backed Democratic candidate because of the threat posed by a third-party challenge from the radical Henry George, the originator of the idea of the wedge. From 1889 to 1895, Roosevelt served on the U.S. Civil Service Commission. The commission itself was a reform meant to provide an alternative to the corrupt spoils system by screening applicants for federal employment. In 1894, New York City elected an anti-Tammany Hall mayor, and the reformer appointed Roosevelt as the president of the city's police commission. Roosevelt's unpopular campaign to close saloons on Sundays led to the Tammany machine regaining power in 1897. But by then, TR had moved on. Although William McKinley, backed by bankers and a generous donation from Standard Oil, had defeated Roosevelt's preferred candidate in the 1896 Republican presidential for the 1896 Republican presidential nomination, Roosevelt vigorously campaigned for McKinley because he viewed William Jennings Bryan, who had the support of the Democrats and populists, as a dangerous and radical threat to order and security. McKinley rewarded Roosevelt with an appointment as an Assistant Secretary of the Navy. Roosevelt used the position to advocate for an expansion of the Navy and a war against Spain. In 1898, Roosevelt resigned his position to form a volunteer cavalry regiment, which became known as the Rough Riders. Roosevelt parlayed the fame that the Rough Riders won into a successful 1898 gubernatorial campaign in New York. When McKinley's vice president died, Roosevelt's New York rivals encouraged the president to add the governor as his running mate and successfully engineered his nomination. Inaugurated as vice president in March 1901, Roosevelt assumed the presidency September 14th after an anarchist fatally shot McKinley. Roosevelt entered the presidency as a progressive reformer intent on addressing the excesses of the Gilded Age while avoiding what he saw as the radical schemes promoted by Bryan, the populist, and the growing socialist movement led by Eugene V. Debs. Roosevelt sought to rein in trust, protect the rights of laborers and consumers, and promote conservation and sustainability. In an era of rampant exploitation, Roosevelt promoted the use of America's natural resources in a wise and sustainable manner. He established the U.S. Forest Service, created 5 national parks, and signed the 1906 Antiquities Act and used that act to designate 18 national monuments. He issued executive orders to protect public land from unrestrained exploitation. In the process, he expanded the powers of the presidency, laid the groundwork for modern environmental policies, and provided plenty of historical source material for us to consider in today's discussion of conservation and sustainability. Welcome to Dickinson State University, welcome to Dickinson, North Dakota, and welcome to our conversation on conservation and sustainability.